Hey guys, this is James from TeaDB bringing you InBetweenIsode number 41. And so for those that are not tuning in for the first time, welcome to the new couch InBetweenIsode. I got a new couch. My parents leveled up with their couch, which means that I get the leftovers, per usual. Living in the same city has its perks. So today, and a lot of you have inquired about this tea because specifically, this is the Yunnan Sourcing 2013 Dasi, and we reviewed this kind of in a episode with Scott, which was the long interview version. I think it was episode 115. And so we were brewing this tea, or Scott rather was brewing this tea, and a lot of you commented on the really strong boss mode parameters that he was using. And so I thought it'd be interesting. I had a sample, and I'd probably consumed it maybe 3 times, had 3 small sessions with it before. And I thought it was a very good tea, and we just happened to drink it for that particular episode. And so I came back to Seattle. I had it with a friend a couple days ago, and so I figured I would finish the sample off, the last 5 grams of it, in my 70 milliliter Gaiwan here today. And we'll just see how the tea differs from that time. And I will tell you that when I brewed it a few days back, it was very different from when we did it with Scott. A lot lighter. Alright. So I've done 1 rinse and 1 steep, of course, with the usual preheating. And we'll do 1 more, and I'm going to try to get through a few different steeps of this. Just to kind of show you guys the character of the tea. This tea I found, and I think Scott commented on this too, it goes for a long time. It's a very infusible tea. You can easily get to, depending on your parameters of course, you can easily get to 13 or 14 steeps with this guy. Maybe more, maybe less, depending on how hard you're going or if you're using a lot of leaf or not. Alright. So it's sort of got like this sweet acorn, little nutty vegetal aroma to it. It's very, it's a fairly pleasant aroma. A lot of times with these Linsong teas, and this one's a little bit vegetal, they can be a little bit too green for me to really enjoy, especially when they're really young. Very like, I don't know, vegetal. If there's too much of that, it can sometimes rub me the wrong way. This tea doesn't really do that. And one thing I'll also say while I'm waiting this to cool down is that this, while it's one of Scott's more expensive offerings, it sells for $122 for a 400 gram cake. I'll say that it's almost become absolutely mandatory for you to calculate price per gram these days. Just with vendors pressing 250 gram cakes, with 200 gram cakes, Scott with his giant 400 gram cakes. And what I've found is that a lot of Scott's teas, while they may not be the hottest teas, but his teas from past years and this year end up being very affordable, because he does tend to press his cakes into those larger 400 gram size. So I mean, dividing that by 2 into a cake ends up being just slightly more expensive than something like the pound cake, or some of the Iwu teas that Scott will press into 250 gram form. Anyways, I think this is cooling down, so cheers guys. So, this is probably the closest tea to reminding me of the Crimson Lotus tea's Slumbering Dragon. And I don't know, I've only had that tea the 1 time, so it's not really probably the... I don't know if I would make that comparison if I had them back to back, per se, but it has this really interesting, like, fern or pine taste to it, sort of wood that's sweet, and it's really different and really interesting. There's a little bit of mouth cooling going on. It's got, I wouldn't say it's got an overly big body, but it has body. It has a nice feel in the mouth as it expands, and it's actually really quite balanced for a tea. Yeah. Steep number 3. Cheers. So it's a little bit more rounded. I think I'm gonna probably I'm gonna heat this up just a little bit, and I'm gonna try to push this maybe for an extra few seconds for this 4th infusion. Really nice form to it. There's definitely a little bit of like aggressive bite to it, a lot less than when Scott brewed it, for instance. There's some really mild bitterness. For the most part, it's very easy to drink, at least the way I'm brewing it right now. And I think it also says something that Scott was able to brew it so hard, and it wasn't like, oh my goodness, this is terrible, or this is like way too strong, or anything like that. It caused us to sweat. It caused significant mouthfeel and aftertaste. You know, things like the fern or pine or whatever you want to call that taste that I'm having. Those would have been a lot more tricky or difficult to pick up during that brewing. I'm going to go once more on this. The leaves are still expanding. And one reason I'm pouring high is I just want the tea to cool down a little bit quicker so I can drink it without the side effect of burning my tongue. Alright, and we will brew this as well. So it's starting to cause me to sweat a little bit on my back, a little bit on my arms. You know, it's a warm summer day. It's not overly hot like we've been having on some of these days in Seattle, but it's not too bad. So I think that's somewhat of a testament to the tea strength. The aroma is enhanced a little bit. I'd say it's a little bit more nutty. A little bit creamy, actually, too. Interesting. Cheers, guys. So, more immediately, the bitterness, as expected, is a lot higher. In fact, it has me wishing I kept that steep time down a little bit. The body is bigger, so it's kind of like pick your attribute sort of thing. And it still has a really nice form to it. I do notice, I guess, a little bit of sort of the body flowing, and some people will sort of interpret this as qi, just sort of like you can feel the tea into the throat, a little bit into the chest, which I consider to be a plus to the tea. It's got some, for the most part, I think it hits a lot of the chords of things that I tend to look for in raw pu'erh. With the Crimson Lotus Slumbering Dragon, I noted this sort of really interesting bitterness at the back of your mouth. you get a little bit of that there. The Crimson Lotus one was really, really enhanced, which I think it made it different. I would say that this one maybe has 50% of that unique character, and 50% of it is a little bit more standard, and that's not at all in a bad way. I would say that this has a bigger body in the mouth, whereas the Crimson Lotus one was like a really deceptive tea in the sense that it was kind of like, a lot of its strength is really focused at places where you're not used to it being. Sort of like it would go into your mouth, it would have a fairly thin initial body, and then it would really thicken up at the back of your mouth and more into your throat. So this one's a little bit rounder, a little bit smoother, not quite as strong. I actually note a little bit of fruity sweetness into it. It's not heavy or not overly done, and this is the first infusion I've really noticed it. Yeah, very interesting. I would definitely say that this is a tea that's worth at least picking up a sample of. The challenge with these 400-gram cakes is, of course, that they're harder to sort of blind buy. It's a lot easier to buy 200 grams at once and use sort of like the cake as a sample metaphor. But I think a lot of people would really, really enjoy this tea. So it's not going to have like the same hype that something that a vendor that just released came out, whether it's Scott, like some of his Iwu teas, or something that White Tea might have released. But I would say that even sitting at $122 for a properly huge cake, that it's definitely not at all overpriced, and I think it's worth some consideration for people that do like to shop in that range. A lot of people have come forward and said that this is absolutely one of their favorite Yunnan Sourcing cakes. Now, I don't know if I would make that distinction quite yet, and not saying I wouldn't make it. It's just that I do get where they are coming from there. So thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this somewhat meandering episode.